Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. In this video, we'll be looking at the game Freezing Inferno. This will be a first look. This is from Princeps Games. It is about the Winter War of 1939-40 between the Soviet Union and Finland. As you can see, this box is really large. This is the biggest boxed game I think I have. It's at least as big as Mr. President and maybe bigger. But as you can see, this is a pretty hefty package here. So looking at the back, you can see here that Princeps Games, this is the components. It's a 14 and up, 1 or 2 player game, 4 to 6 hours to play. It's got a lot of components, player aids, etc., etc. Freezing Inferno is a medium-level war game covering one of the conflicts at the beginning of World War II between the USSR and Finland, also known as the Winter War, 1939 to 1940. So I'm going to rip the shrink off here and we'll see what's inside the box. Okay, so we have the shrink wrap off. Let's take the lid off. This box is big, by the way, like real big. I'm half tempted to grab Mr. President off my shelf and compare the two. Oops, because this is a really big box. So the map is mounted. It does come in shrink wrap, as you can see. We'll put that aside for the moment. So we have a pad here with maps on them, and there are, I think, 50 of these, if I remember correctly. Then we have our manual. So the manual is 46 pages long, but the last basically 16 pages of it are bot setups. So you can play solitaire, and you can play solitaire for either side. So when you're playing, here we have a Finland bot setup. So if you're playing as the Soviets, this would tell you where to put your units, and there are a variety of setups here. So these are all Finnish setups. And then towards the back, we get Soviet setups for the USSR. And you can see these are different types of units. I would obviously be infantry. You have A, I believe, is artillery, T for tank, B for bomber, and F for fighter. I think that's, and AA is obviously anti-aircraft. So the rules for this game, they give it a medium-high complexity. I'm not sure that maybe it's a little bit on the heavy side of medium, but I would personally probably say it's medium. It's not really all that complicated. The rules are laid out pretty well. So as you can see, first 27 pages are the rules, and then you have the solo mode stuff that basically takes up the rest of the book. So it's a very straightforward game. You can play it 1 or 2 players. Here's a list of everything that comes in it, the board, the calendar cards, we'll talk about that, the CRT, the player aid cards, etc., etc. 5 sheets of counters, this rule book, money chits, and assorted dice, 5 total, 2 D20, a D12, a D10, and a D8. To win, the Soviets have to hold all their own cities and occupy 2 of the 3 Finnish key cities. We'll see those when we look at the map. The game lasts 8 rounds. The board is double-sided, so you have two sides of the board. One is more traditional hex and counter war game. The other one is a little bit more, it's still hex based, but it's a little bit more graphically designed, a little more fancy, I guess, for lack of a better word. There's optional modules, I think 3 of them, weather, tech, and something else. Weather, technology, and diplomacy. That's the 3. I forgot the 3rd one. There are some really good previews and stuff. This is actually the production copy. I just got this out of Kickstarter. So there were several videos done with preview copies by a bunch of different, very well thought of, very good content creators. Let's just say it that way. I know Gimpy Gamer did something. I know Zilla did something. Mo may have done something. There's a bunch of different people that have done stuff on this game. You do have zones of control. There are various types of units, as I mentioned. So here we have our 7, I think there are 7 types of units. Infantry, artillery, tank, fighter, bomber, anti-air, and HQ. You're allowed to have 5 in a hex. The combat results is interesting. Basically, you take the combat factors, and as I'm talking about that, let's look at our counters here that come in a baggie. So there are 5 counter sheets here, and of course I can't get my fingers to open this. There we go. So let's pull these out, and these counters kind of remind me a bit of like Flying Pig game counters with the rounded corners, and they're big chunky counters. So very, very nicely done. You can see there's art on them. Obviously these are infantry. You can see the 11 movement points. You have an attack factor and a defense factor. We have aircraft, of course, and then you have assorted, markers out of supply, etc., control markers, things like that. Double-sided. So that is counter sheet 1. And again, so you have attack and defense. And so you can have, like, let's look at the infantry here. You can have 5 of these in one hex. And you would take the attack factor, and then you add the total number of units in the hex. So this would be 2, and then if you had five units in the stack, it would be 2 plus 5 would be 7, and that would be the factor. And then if you're on defense, you have a 3 here, and if you had 5 defenders with a 3, you would get an 8. So that's how that works. And obviously it's like counters. So yeah, we have a lot of, this is obviously Finnish forces. There are 3 counter sheets. Finnish on the left, Soviet on the right, and I just punched it out. So you saw how easy that punches out. Here is a better look at the counter. It's very nice. It's got a Soviet Red Army soldier on it, little flag in the corner, and the 2 sides are the same. So this isn't like a flip it over for a step loss kind of game, I don't think. I haven't read all the way through the rules. But you can see the 5 sheets are fairly similar in terms of what's on them. There are variations. They're not identical, but or maybe they are identical. Maybe I spoke too soon. They look very much the same, but there are 5 of them, and they do come in a bag. Now the box is really nice. So it's got these thick cardboard box inserts for your units. So we have a Soviet one here. Then we have a Finnish one that has some stuff in it, apparently, and that's where our dice are living. So, as mentioned, you've got your 2 D20s. You've got a D12, a D8, and a D10. And then we have a couple more boxes here. These have cards in them. So these would be the calendar cards. So the calendar cards basically are like event cards, and there are 8 turns, and each one has, I think, 3 cards that can be used there. So basically you set them in order and you draw one. And so you can see here, this would be from turn 1, and it says November 30th to December 10th, 1939, the bombing of Helsinki. And then it's got, a description, and then the attack, basically the act, the result of the event. Sorry, attack modifier +1 for Soviet air units when attacking the city hex. So there are, as I mentioned, there are a bunch of these. Let me open it up. So you see 1. So here are the 3 for turn 1. So you have the bombing of Helsinki. The Soviets took Petsamo. The Soviets reached the Mannerheim line. Then 2. You have 3 for 2. You have 3 for 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there you go. So those are your calendar cards, which, as I mentioned, are basically event cards. And then I'm guessing we have some more stuff in here. Yes, so these would be our money counters. So I believe this goes with, and we'll see the track on the board, I think, that you'll see, yeah, so we'll get into this here in a second. But basically you track your, the amount of, I forget what it's called, something points, like military points maybe. It does say MC on here, maybe it's military currency or something like that. But you use them to buy things. And then here are our player aids, and they're all mounted, which is really cool. So you have two-sided AI bot one, Soviets on one side, Finns on the other. Then we have, this would be for the technology improvements, I think. Well, we have weather, espionage, sabotage. Okay, so that has Soviet symbol on the back. Here's our ground-to-ground and air-to-air combat, and then air-to-ground combat. So these are the CRTs. So as I mentioned, it's kind of odd base. So in that example I gave you where it was 7 and 8, it would be, so it's an attack to defender ratio, and the strength ratio would be in here. So you would find, like, say 7, 8, which would be right here. So we'd be in this column, and then you roll your D10, and there's some modifiers, and you get a result, basically. I think that's pretty much how it works. I could be wrong. Here's the finish track for, I guess, the advanced modules. We've got key to the CRT abbreviations. We've got the action sequence for the various rounds. As I said, there are 8 rounds. Round 1 is different because it's the first round of the game. Initial operations. How much units cost for purchase with our MCs over there. And then this would be the weather add-on. And you can see the effects of the temperature and the weather conditions. So you can have icy, very cold, cold and chilly, fog, snow, rain, and clear. So I do like that these are mounted. I think this was a stretch goal for the Kickstarter, if I remember correctly. This one actually fulfilled fairly quickly. I won't name names, but there are some that have been kind of dragging their feet, in my opinion, with how long it's taking. So let me stack all this back in the box. So that is pretty much the first look at this game. I can and will do something, do a playthrough at some point in the near future. I am actually looking forward to trying this game. I think it's really cool. And the components are just awesome. So I really dig the components here. Not to sound like a hipster or something, but I do enjoy these components. So I'm just putting everything back. And then we're going to take a look at the map. So down here you see we have Leningrad. And then we have, so you have the various cities that are, so all of these kind of purple ones, you can see Murmansk up here. And then some of these other, I'm not even going to attempt to name these because I would definitely butcher these. I know how to say Murmansk though. So Murmansk is up here, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Soviet cities. Then on the Finn side, there are 3 key cities. So Helsinki is one, and that's right here. And then you have Oulu. I'm sure I'm butchering that, and I apologize ahead of time. Here, and then way up at the north, way up here is Petsamo, which I'm also probably not pronouncing correctly. But you can see we stretch all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. We do have the track I was talking about, but here we have the starting points, and each turn you get a certain amount, and you track them on here. We have some attack modifiers for when the attacker is infantry and the defender is something else, and vice versa. Now on the other side, we have the other map. And this map is the one that was kind of the traditional wargamey hex encounter map. This one is more artistic, I guess, maybe. But you don't have names for the Soviet cities. They're just kind of sitting out here inside the USSR borders. And the only Finnish cities that actually have their names on them are the key cities. So like Helsinki, Oulu, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. And Petsamo, which again, I'm sure I'm not naming those correctly, but everything else is pretty much the same. It's the same map. It's just, like I said, it's a little different. Like you have pine trees and you have airfields and the towns and so on and so forth. And all these lakes that can be frozen. The only lake that you can never cross would be Lake Ladoga. But yeah, so that would be what the map looks like. Oh, there's also a diplomacy track down here for the League of Nations, I guess. And you have pro-Finnish, neutral, and pro-Soviet, and it has to get really far over to the right to be pro-Soviet. They were the aggressors, obviously, in this war. So they're standing at the League of Nations was, whoa, I'm going to break this thing if I'm not careful, was not great. And so there is the map. So that's going to actually do it. Let me throw the map back in the box here. All right, that will do it for this video. I do appreciate you guys taking a moment to watch. And hopefully this was okay. I apologize for my pronunciation issues and so on. But yeah, that will do it. So as always, thank you for watching. It is much appreciated. Please consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing. Feel free to leave comments, etc., etc. So my name is Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered. And until next time, happy gaming.